So let's talk about, I want to switch gears and talk about Andrew Cuomo for a minute, because boy, this guy was the darling of the Democratic Party last year for his handling of the COVID crisis. The neoliberals and the party leadership were just falling all over Andrew. There was talk of him perhaps becoming a presidential candidate at some point. He was just the darling, right? Now, a year later, he is embroiled in all kinds of drama and scandal. We have corruption charges. We have sexual harassment charges. We have a third gal that's come out this morning. The first two were his ex-aides. One of them mentioned a story where she was asked by him to play strip poker on a private jet. Do you really need to tell a guy to not do that with his employees? Like, seriously? How is this even a thing? But now there's also charges of ruthless intimidation, which is hardly shocking if you've ever paid close attention to New York politics, right? So I wanted to bring everybody's attention to a report that was in the Times-Union that's not getting a lot of attention, but I think it's probably not an isolated incident. So in this report by Brandon Lyons and Edward McKinley, this is going back to 2012 when Cuomo was trying to approve hydrofracking in the state, which is very bad for the environment. And the EPA had publicly filed unfavorable comments. So the then regional administrator for the EPA, her name is Judith Enck, received a threatening phone call for Cuomo's director of state operations, a guy named Howard Glasser. And he basically said, I'm going to destroy you if you don't withdraw the documents. And he said a few other things. I doubt, knowing Andrew Cuomo, I doubt that this is an isolated incident. I think this has probably happened in more areas as well. What are your thoughts on where Andrew is at now and where the Democratic Party is at with supporting him?
I've seen
where do we begin?
I've seen far too many people on Twitter actually defending this guy.
Right.
We had one of those viral tweets where this, young person, whatever, was talking about, you got to understand, now shut up. Like, there's no defending Cuomo.
Yeah.
If you're defending Cuomo, then you are abandoning any principle that you may have had. These people are absolutely, they're not opportunists coming forward now. They're coming forward now because now is the time to come forward. I hate when people say, I don't know, the timing of some of these things is suspicious.
Right.
Really, you have to look for anybody who's been in that kind of position. It's not something that you're just readily sitting there like, oh, I can't wait to do this.
Right.
It's a painstaking decision that these people make. Do I come forward with this? This is obviously not good for me. It's not something I want to relive or rehash, but I have to for the greater good. Think all the women coming out against Bill Cosby, the women against Harvey Weinstein.
That's right.
They all came out relatively close together because once the first domino falls, then it's easier for people to say, okay, it wasn't just me. It's not my fault. So I need to come forward with this, because that's another big part of it too, is that thing. Well, what if it was my fault? Victims tend to, have a little bit of that sometimes. And as for all these other things with the COVID and the bullying, Cuomo with the Democratic Party is the kid who was told to go clean his room. And if you clean your room, you're going to get all these great things. So he goes in there, he shoves everything in the closet, and he closes the door. And he says, Mom, come look, it's all clean.
It's all shoved clean. Back in there.
Yeah. And then the closet doors burst open and everybody sees, oh my God, this guy is just as bad as, the other people that we rant about. Look, I'm in Florida with Ron DeSantis. I have gone nonstop against him. And I frequently now have to say, look, Cuomo, pretty much the same thing. I've said Cuomo is basically the left's Donald Trump at this point with the bullying, the grandiose attitude. I don't know about that nipple ring, though. But everything else, this is what we fought against for 4 years. Are you really going to let this guy just get away with all of this stuff? Are you going to let him continue to be the face of your party? Because if so, have fun with that. 2022 is going to be really unpleasant for you.
I cannot agree more. I also think back to the IDC. Who remembers the IDC? The power sharing agreement that the state in New York State, the senators from the Democrats and the Republicans had together. How much progressive legislation died because of that? A lot. So, here you had progressive Congress folks, state senators that were able to say, you know, I support Medicare for all. I support the Green New Deal. I support not having hydrofracking in the state. These are the things that I support. But then none of that would ever get passed through because of the power sharing agreement that they had with Republicans. You know, and this is the kind of stuff that goes on with the party machinations that I think really infuriate Americans, infuriate the voters, because they see it for what it is. When they look at that, they see a Democratic Party that is spineless, that is not willing to stand up to the Republicans. In fact, they're enabling them in many ways, right? But they're able to get away with it because they say, but look, and they point out their website, but look at all the wonderful things I say I support. Well, you know, this is why we're at where we are with Force the 15, Force the Vote, and all these other things. People are fed up. They're tired of hearing all of these folks say we support these progressive things, but then they don't deliver the goods, and they don't even fight for delivering the goods. They can't even like raise a finger to fight for something that's necessary. So here we are. And I think Andrew Cuomo, I think the closet metaphor is perfect. I think he's been shoving stuff in that closet for years and years and years, and it's just bursting out the sides. So I think there's more drama and more scandal coming out this week probably. I doubt it's only these 3 gals. I'm sure that there's other women that have experienced harassment at his hands. Generally, men like that tend to like be serial harassers. And back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I hate to say it, but there are very few women that didn't experience something of these things. When I hear these stories, I can relate because I'm like, yeah, that sounds believable. And you are right when you talk about this being a difficult decision for anyone. It isn't comfortable. It's very uncomfortable. It isn't to your benefit because there are, whether we like it or not, women still slut shame. They still victim blame. They still do these things. So you're putting yourself in that spotlight, and there's very little benefit. So you do have to make a decision that is about the common good and that you're going to be strong. I mean, look what happened to Tara Reid when she tried to tell her story. That's another prime example. My worst part of this, my worst favorite thing of this is this sort of litmus test that some of the liberals do about whether or not was it a Democrat that did it or a Republican. They seem to go full bore if it was a Republican that is guilty of sexual harassment. But if it was a Democratic male, then they sort of go, well, maybe, you know, there's a whole, you know what I'm saying? There's a double standard that's there that's just infuriating. We should not accept this behavior from anyone, period, end of story. Nothing further to say.
And you know, it's really interesting too, because Cuomo's failures as a leader in New York have, you know, as you're saying here, they've helped expose a lot of liberal hypocrisy out there.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, when it's Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein and, you know, Donald Trump, it's always, you got to believe women, you got to believe women. Right. But then when it's, you know, Joe Biden and Andrew Cuomo, people say, whoa,
wait a minute.
Let's think about this for a minute. Are we sure these people aren't just trying to be famous? No, I don't. Can you name a single person who's become famous because they came out and said, hey, so-and-so harassed me? Like that's not a claim to fame. Right. That doesn't make you rich and famous. And it's idiotic for anyone, regardless of where you are on that left spectrum, to try to justify this or downplay it just because it's your side. But once again, we go to this and it's all back to the tribalism.
It's all back to the tribal. And isn't that the problem? And it's infuriating because, so, you know, there might be some cases where it isn't true, but they're very, very, very rare. And my point is this, is you don't treat the victims of sexual harassment or sexual assault that way. Like, when's the last time somebody stole a candy bar from a store and there was something to the effect of like, well, he's probably guilty because he bounced a check 20 years ago. Why is it that women who are victims of sexual harassment get treated that way? It's ridiculous. You don't do that with any other crime. And yes, that's a crime. Sexually harassing, sexually assaulting a woman is a crime, and we should not tolerate it in our society. Anyway.
I agree 100%. I mean, there's just...
Thank you for attending my tea talk.
But it is disgusting. And, you know, we're watching this play out. And hopefully Cuomo, I don't think it's in him personally. I mean, I don't live in New York, but I don't think it's in him to step down graciously. So this is going to be a fight. And I think it's going to be a fight that a lot of the more center Democrats aren't going to want to have, but they're going to have to wake up and realize This is poison. This is poison to you. It's poison to your agenda. And every day that this man stays in office, you're giving fodder to those on the right to say, look at how crazy things are up there in New York. Aren't you glad we don't have that down here in maskless Texas? So yeah, it's going to be bad. And it's taking the focus away from the fights we should be having, which is, again, the fight for 15, the pandemic relief, which, by God, who knows if that's coming, and, of course, the rent relief that we desperately need. Cuomo is a big distraction from all of those things for the party, and they need to get rid of it.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.